They say water never forgets. Every ripple carries memories. Every current hides secrets. And along the riverbanks, where shadows meet the water, the dead sometimes return to remind the living. This is a true account of one man's terrifying night by the riverside. Jacob was a traveler, the kind who loved quiet places far from the noise of the city. That evening, he arrived at the small town of Millstone, where locals warned him never to camp by the river. But Jacob thought it was just a story meant to scare outsiders. He set up his tent by the river, lit a small fire, and watched the sun slip away. The fog rolled in heavy, pressing against the water's surface. He didn't notice at first, but the silence around him grew strange. Then, softly at first, he heard a humming, a woman's voice, faint and distant, drifting across the water. At first, he told himself it was a wind, but as it grew clearer, Jacob knew it was a voice. He turned his head, and there, standing ankle-deep in the river, was a woman in white. He blinked, and she was gone. Every hair on his body stood on end. He shook it off, convinced he was just tired. He crawled into his tent and tried to sleep. Sometime after midnight, the sounds returned, a soft dripping of water, then the unmistakable squelch of footsteps on wet soil. Someone was walking outside his tent. Jacob held his breath, his heart racing. Then came a whisper right outside the canvas. It called his name. Jacob. His blood froze. No one in this town even knew his name. The tent began to shake. He grabbed his flashlight and tore it open. Nothing, only darkness and fog. But when he turned back, his light caught something on the ground. Wet footprints. And they weren't leading away from the tent. They were leading into it. He swung the light around. In the corner sat a pale woman, soaked dress clinging to her skin, long black hair hanging over her face. She crouched low, her eyes black as a river, her mouth stretched too wide to be human. The light flickered, then went out. Jacob stumbled out, screaming, crashing through the trees. Behind him, the humming followed. Every time he turned, he saw her, sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, vanishing and reappearing closer. She wasn't chasing on foot. She was pulling herself through the water, dragging him back to the river. He tripped and fell at the riverbank. She rose from the water, arms outstretched, her humming now a scream that shook the trees. Just as she reached for him, the church bell from town rang faintly in the distance. The figure froze, shrieked, and dissolved into the mist. At sunrise, Jacob staggered back into Millstone. His clothes were torn, his face pale with terror. The townsfolk stared. One old woman shook her head and whispered, "The Lady of the River." They told him the story of a bride who drowned a century ago, still searching for souls to join her beneath the water. Jacob never spoke of that night again. But sometimes when he closes his eyes, he still hears the humming. The river remembers.